Southern California, good afternoon, and welcome to another edition of the SoCal Supreme Sports Show. Today we have ourselves quite a show, as we have a lot to get into in the world of Southern California sports, such as the Chargers. Hey, they finally got their first win of the season, and it only took facing another team which self-destructed harder than them to do so. But hey, a win's a win as they take on the Raiders this week. Can they get the job done against the Silver and Black? And the Rams, unfortunately, lost on Monday Night Football against the Bengals in a rematch of Super Bowl 56. Can the Rams get back on track against the Colts? Also, LAFC disappointed against Tigres, but hey, it's just a tournament that has no meaning as they are basically getting back on track when it comes to MLS play. And also, the MLB is back to its final week as the Dodgers are preparing for the playoffs, the Padres are in their last week to hopefully make the playoffs, and the Angels are basically packing it in and preparing for the offseason. Also, Angel City and Wave FC are back next week as I'll be previewing their matchups as the push for the playoffs is getting closer by the minute. All that and more here on the SoCal Supreme Sports Show. This is Teran Rodriguez bringing you another edition of the SoCal Supreme Sports Show here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. And welcome one, welcome all to another edition of the SoCal Supreme Sports Show. Thank you all for joining me on this beautiful Friday afternoon, Friday evening, Friday wherever you are listening from. Either way, you've made your way to episode 151 of the SoCal Supreme Sports Show. And without any further delay, let us begin. But first and foremost, the SoCal Supreme Sports Show would not be where it's at without IE Sports Radio providing the platform to go live on Spreaker. Please do follow IE Sports Radio on what is formerly known as Twitter, X, Instagram, and on TikTok at IE Sports Radio. And we also have a Facebook page. All you have to do is type in the word IE, then sports, then radio in the search bar, like us, and then boom, that's how you're able to follow us on Facebook. We also have a website, www.iesportsradio.com, for your sports news, IE Sports Radio blog, Hall of Fame, Fans of the Month, pages dedicated to each podcast, such as the SoCal Supreme Sports Show, our community forum, and our merchandise shop. Because for the past 9 years and counting, IE Sports Radio has been bringing you amazing content ranging from interviewing legendary athletes, coaches, and other authorized media personnel to building tailor-made shows dedicated to all major sports cities around the country. All the while, we've been continuing to be by the fans and for the fans, and we are not going to stop by any means whatsoever. Thank you to everyone for all of your support and for making IE Sports Radio your direct feed for all that sports. Huge shout out to our sponsor, Planet Jerky Premium Brisket Beef Jerky. Planet Jerky is the official jerky of the 2022 California League champion Lake Elsinore Storm, the single-A affiliate of the San Diego Padres. This all-brisket jerky has gluten-free options, contains no MSG, no sodium nitrate, it's low in sugar, and high in protein. This is some of the best jerky you can get your hands on, and all you have to do is visit www.planetjerky.net and place your order. Follow Planet Jerky on Instagram at Planet Jerky. Once again, huge shout out to our sponsor, Planet Jerky Premium Brisket Beef Jerky, the jerky that is on a whole other planet. And you can follow the SoCal Supreme Sports Show on X at SoCal Show IESR. And you can follow me on Twitter at Teran Rodriguez 1 or on X, formerly known as Twitter. And without any further delay, let us begin. So I'm hoping not to have a big show or a long show just because I have quite a bit to get in. I have a lot to get into, and also I have other things going on later on in the day for me, but let's see if I can knock this out in maybe less than 90 minutes. So let's start off with the Chargers, just because football is king. So the Chargers, I can't believe it. They actually got a win against the Vikings. And this was one of the matchups I was highly concerned about, just because the Chargers, more often than not, struggle against the Vikings. It happened in the Mike Zimmer days, back when he used to coach the Vikings, and back when Philip Rivers used to be the quarterback. And it, more often than not, happened in the olden years. But this time, there was a new coach for the Vikings in Kevin O'Connell, which, thankfully, he is no Mike Zimmer, unfortunately for the Vikings, as the Chargers wound up winning 28-24, despite not having Austin Eckler. Now, I mentioned in my ISR fandom video that the Chargers only had a whopping 30 rushing yards altogether. This is where the Chargers really miss Austin Eckler. They do not have a reliable running back one. Joshua Kelly is not running back one material. I'm sorry, but it's the truth. And it's sad because he has improved. I'll give him that much. He has not fumbled the ball, knock on wood, but hopefully he's able to step up, and he's just not that running back one material. And I'm sorry, but it's the truth. Eckler was seen at practice this past week, and hopefully that is a sign that he'll be ready for this week. But I wouldn't bank on Eckler playing this week, just because, in my opinion, I think Eckler should be ready by the time after the bye, after week 5. Just because you don't want to rush an ankle-injured Austin Eckler back after a bye week. Just because I'd rather have Austin Eckler back at full strength than at not so full strength. And the rushing attack was so bad that Justin Herbert had to get in on the action, as he had 11 rushing yards, which was one behind Joshua Kelly. Speaking of Justin Herbert, he had to play Superman, as the dude had a monster game. He had 40 for 47 in terms of his passes, and he had 405 passing yards and 3 passing touchdowns, no interceptions, and he only got sacked one time, as he had a quarterback rating of almost 93, and he had a rating altogether of 123.8, which was outstanding. And interestingly enough, and I hope I don't jinx him, he's the only quarterback who has not turned the ball over, which is incredible. So meaning he hasn't fumbled, he hasn't gotten picked off, so it's incredible that Justin Herbert has not gone, he's gone 3 games without a turnover, which is great. I mean, he's gotten sacked, yes, but he hasn't turned the ball over. So the people who keep saying he's the reason why the Chargers have lost 2 games are stupid. So go find a new narrative to rag on. Now, I will also say this. He did almost get picked off, but almost doesn't cut it. The person who was defending Joshua Palmer on that one touchdown, which eventually gave the Chargers the lead for good, saw the ball slip out of his hands and into the hands of Joshua Palmer, and it was a touchdown. Now, obviously that was great and all that the Chargers won, but it came at a price. The Chargers lost Mike Williams, as he unfortunately had a knee injury, which eventually turned out to be a torn ACL. And unfortunately, Mike Williams is done for the season, which really, 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 really sucks. It's so heartbreaking, just because I feel Mike Williams would have done so much wonders for Kellen Moore's offensive system. And it's a good thing the Chargers did draft Quentin Johnston in the draft. Otherwise, they'd have to be banking on some of their practice squad wide receivers. I mean, they also still have Jalen Guyton, who's still on the PUP list, and I can't wait for him to get off the PUP list and whatnot. And they also still have Darius Davis, who they drafted as well. But in all honesty, it just sucks that Mike Williams just got hurt, and I heard the injury was not good. And here's the thing. Mike Williams had a monster game. He had 120 21 receiving yards, 1 touchdown, and he even caught a 49-yard touchdown pass from Keenan Allen. Yes, Keenan Allen threw a touchdown pass. I was very surprised a trick play worked for the Chargers, and when a trick play works for the Chargers, you know that their offense was clicking, and most likely their opponent's defense was pretty weenie, if you ask me. So, I was good and all, but the defense still was about the equivalent as gift wrap. And that's kind of a disrespect to gift wrap, because even gift wrap wouldn't have allowed 24 points from the Vikings. Fortunately for the Chargers, the turnovers were a thing, as the Vikings fumbled the ball in the first quarter, and then Kirk Cousins turned the ball over late. And the turnover wasn't all his fault, but the play before was. So it was late in the game, and the Vikings converted a 4th and 5 to TJ Hawkinson. He was short of the goal line as there was like 38 seconds left, and he shaved down 22 seconds, and suddenly there's like 16 seconds left. So instead of spiking the ball and stopping the clock to give his team a little bit of a breather, the clock is still going. So eventually Kirk drops back and he's about to throw, and he decides to go to TJ Hawkinson, which, okay, I don't know why you don't want to target Justin Jefferson, but whatever, bro. He tries to go to TJ Hawkinson, but the ball gets deflected once and twice, and then it goes into the hands of Kenneth Murray, of all players. Yes, the same Kenneth Murray who got ragged on by Chargers players during the Titans week, and it was picked off. And he also got ragged on by the Titans as well. Speaking of Titans, Davidson Crooks pops in the chat room. He says, "What's good?" And hey, Davidson, glad to have you in the chat room, buddy. So eventually, the Chargers eked out a win, and they did have 2 red zone goal line stands, which was incredible. I didn't think the Chargers defense was able to have a bend but don't break defense. So, in all honesty, it was great. And here's the interesting thing. The Chargers also lost Derwin James in that game as well. They lost him in about the third quarter, and I'm thinking, well, that's game right there, because the Chargers can't win without Derwin James. He's kind of the heartbeat of that defense. So, without Derwin, I thought the Chargers were pretty much had their goose cooked. But fortunately, they had Justin Herbert, who fortunately did not get picked off. But that's not his problem. That's the defender's problem for being a sponsor of Butterfingers, as well as the entire team of the Minnesota Vikings, of course. But in all honesty, this was kind of an instant classic. And I work at a grocery store, and I saw a Chargers fan come through the line, and I was bagging his groceries. I was like, "You think the Chargers are going to pull it out?" He's like, "Well, I hope so." And I told him, like, this is probably the game where whichever team self-destructs first is going to lose. So that was the narrative of this game. Whichever team doesn't self-destruct is going to win. And fortunately for the Chargers, they didn't self-destruct. Though Joshua Palmer did have a fumble, which does not bode well for the Chargers. It's actually their first turnover of the season. So, and you can't blame that on Justin Herbert, because you have to have control of the ball. It's not so... Yikes. I thought we had problems with Joshua Kelly fumbling and whatnot. Now we have 2 Joshuas fumbling. Anyway, but the Chargers did get the win, and boy howdy, that is a huge win, and I think Justin Herbert was nominated for Air Rookie of the Week, and I don't know if he got Offensive Rookie of the Week. I want to say he did, because, come on, you can't tell me he doesn't deserve that honor. Like, the dude had 405 passing yards, so I don't really pay attention to those awards, but if he did, then awesome, but if he didn't, then so be it. So it's a good win for the Chargers, and I'm happy, even though I didn't get a chance to really watch this game. I just saw updates on my phone, and I'm just thankful that the Chargers got win number 1, because if they were 0-3, then that would have been absolutely horrible. So it is what it is at this point. It's tough to win the NFL, but what can you do at this point? And unfortunately, no, that's player of the month. I'm sorry, that Tua was player of the month. I'm trying to find rookie or player of the week, but in all, I wouldn't be surprised if Justin Herbert wasn't player of the week for week number 3. I mean, if he was, cool, but if he wasn't, it is what it is. So that is that right there for the Chargers. Their next game is against Raiders. And unfortunately, before that, Justin Herbert did not get named Offensive Player of the Week, as that went to Devon Achane, as the Dolphins wound up crushing the Denver Broncos. Anyway, now back to the Chargers. The Chargers are back at SoFi to take on Raiders, as they take on the Las Vegas Raiders in Week 4. Now, the Raiders have been struggling as of late. Remember when they beat the Denver Broncos? I think that was more so of the Broncos being disguised as a clown car, more so than the Raiders actually being pretty decent. And that's no disrespect to the Raiders. I think the Raiders fought hard against the Steelers. But honestly, I will say this. It's going to be the battle of two really incompetent coaches in Brandon Staley and Josh McDaniels. So it's going to be really fascinating, if you ask me. And I already could tell that SoFi is going to be filled to the brim with Raider fans. Some were saying like 75% is going to be like filled with Raider fans and whatnot. So for the sake of the Chargers, I hope they're able to get the job done, just because I feel on paper they're able to get it done. And then Jimmy Garoppolo is still in concussion protocol, but he has practice, which is a good thing. And for me, I'll say this: if Jimmy Garoppolo does play, I will say this: the Raiders do have a good chance to basically they do have a good chance at winning. And before I continue, I do want to give my condolences, and I do want to say I hope that Chandler Jones receives the care and help that he needs, as Marshawn Lynch did say, you gotta take care of y'all mentals. And let's just say Chandler Jones is battling he's battling his own mental battles. And Marshawn Lynch said it best: take care of y'all mentals, take care of y'all chickens, take care of y'all bodies, but mainly take care of y'all mentals. So sending all the love to Chandler Jones, just because mental health is no joke and whatnot. So anyway, over to the Raider matchup. All right, so here's my thing for the Chargers. If they play the way that they have been playing, turnover free and whatnot, I think they have a good shot at taking down the Raiders. Now, here's my thing. The Raiders are much better than I think their record shows. And I think the run defense kind of showed its true colors. I think the Chargers, obviously, they allowed Alexander Mattison to have a decent game. And Josh Jacobs has obviously been the thorn in the Chargers' side. So I think this could be the get-right game for Josh Jacobs, if you ask me. So if the Chargers want to win, they got to bottle up Josh Jacobs. He hasn't really been explosive, but this could be the big game that he needs. But as for this game itself, I really think that the Chargers can get the job done. It's just all about if the Chargers can play a full 4 quarters and Brandon Staley doesn't do anything dumb. Speaking of dumb and Brandon Staley, I'm just going to say I was appalled that Brandon Staley went for it on 4th down. And I understand the reasoning for this. Going back to the Vikings game, it was 4th and 1, and if the Chargers went for it on 4th and 1 inside their own, I think, 24. And keep in mind, the Chargers don't have Austin Eckler, so their running back one is Joshua Kelly. So if you get the first down, it's game over. But if you don't get the first down, you turn the ball over on downs and you give the ball back to the Vikings, and they get extremely good territory as they have a chance to possibly win the game. So the Chargers run the ball with Joshua Kelly, which is completely obvious, and they don't get the first down. I am very, very disappointed that the Chargers decided to take the ball out of the hands of Justin Herbert, the best player. Now, if they had Austin Eckler, I would totally understand giving the ball to Eckler. Or if they had a fullback, I would totally understand. Like, if they still had Xander Horvath, I would totally understand going for it on a 4th and 1 inside their own 26-25. But the fact that they went for it and they rolled the dice and they have a not-so-running back one and they didn't get it, it just does not justify Brandon Staley as a good head coach. I get it. You want to go for it and put the dagger in the Vikings' throat, but you don't have the running back personnel to do so. And you didn't learn this lesson before when you played the Raiders back in Week 18 a couple seasons ago. And as a result, you wound up giving them good field position, and they scored off of it. So, Brandon Staley is really walking on thin ice here. And it also just shows that the Chargers really need a good running back one. And if Austin Eckler doesn't come back this week, or if that ankle injury is really serious, then the Chargers really need to maybe sign somebody that's available, like James Robinson or Leonard Fournette. If they have to get him for cheap, then get him for cheap. Like, this is ridiculous. Like, you can't just not have a good running back. Unfortunately, Joshua Kelly just is not that running back one. So, sadly, I just can't justify it anymore. All he just needed was one down. And I give the credit to the Vikings. They came up big on that big 4th down, which could have definitely been the game clincher right there. But the Chargers, it's just not justifiable to take the ball out of your best player's hands and then just hand it off to a running back two primarily. So, what will we do? What will we do with you, Brandon Staley? I just really think that Brandon Staley needs to be fired. Well, what can you do? All right, but that's that for the Chargers right there. And as for the Raiders-Chargers game, I got the Chargers winning. And I know this is going to sound a little far-fetched, but if Garoppolo, for some reason, doesn't clear concussion protocols, and the Chargers have to start, or if the Raiders have to start Brian Hoyer, I got the Chargers winning 31-14. Now, if Jimmy G is playing, I got the Chargers winning 31-24. I think it's a respectable score right there. That's because I think the Chargers defense will still give up points. And then, hopefully, for the Chargers' sake, they will find Austin Eckler back. But if Austin Eckler can't go, then I can imagine we will see more Joshua Kelly. And that's something we don't really want to see. So, all in all, that's pretty much that for the Chargers right there. I still think it's definitely winnable to beat the Raiders. That's because, like I said, they're a clown car disguised as a solid team. And that's no disrespect to them. I think they can be a good team. They have the talent, but they just aren't using it. And Josh, and also they have Davante Adams. I failed to mention they have Davante Adams when I'm just mentioning only what's his face, Josh Jacobs. Like, Davante Adams can slice and dice any of the Chargers cornerbacks, unless it's like Asante Samuel, which I don't even know if he can keep up, but I digress. All right, but that's that for the Chargers right there. Now jumping over to Rams-Bengals. All right, I didn't get to see a whole lot of this matchup, but I saw the fourth quarter, and I didn't really miss much. What I didn't miss was the Rams losing 19-16. Now, here's my thing for the Rams. Their offense just was not there throughout the entire game. Now, obviously, they did throw the touchdown late in the game, but that was late in the game. And that was basically just a last gasp of an effort to try to win the game. And they did not recover the onside kick, which, if they recover an onside kick, well, congratulations. You have very, very good special teams. But for the Rams, their offense was so quiet, and I know they had a touchdown taken away because Zach Taylor called a timeout. But still, your offense just was not effective, and sadly, you just could not adapt to the Bengals' stingy defense. And I'll give the Bengals credit. The Bengals do have a really tight defense, and they gave Matthew Stafford a living nightmare. They gave him fits with two interceptions and 6 sacks? Yes, that was the case. As the Bengals, this was kind of their bounce-back game. And unfortunately for the Rams, this was kind of their brought back down to earth, as they've kind of been brought back down to earth ever since the Niners loss. And how foolish of me to basically pick the Rams. I picked the Rams to win just because I wanted to go bold, because last week I had my 150th episode and I was like, let's go bold and pick the Rams. No, I was wrong. As Jen B pops in the chat room, he says, "Hey, Teran." Hey, Jen. She's the host of our Cleveland show, the show of the land, which goes live every Tuesday at 3 p.m. Pacific time, 6 p.m. Eastern, every Tuesday. But back to the Bengals-Rams. I will say this. At least the Rams didn't let this one get out of hand. And they also registered a takeaway, which is great. What wasn't so great is that the offense just sputtered. It wasn't like the previous weeks where Kyron Williams and Puka Nacua was just straight up amazing. It just straight up sputtered, and they were banking on field goals from Brett Maher. And that's another thing. At least the Rams have a good field goal kicker after Matt Gay departed for Indianapolis, which that's going to be something we discuss as well. But for the Rams, this was a game where the Rams could have definitely won. And this game was so ripe for the picking. The Rams could have definitely won this game. And even they had every chance in the world to get this game. But the Rams just couldn't. And it's so frustrating because they had their chances. Sadly, that was not the case because the Rams just got in their own way. And as a result, they wound up losing. And they now are 1-2 as opposed to being 2-1. And being close to possibly getting close to what's the word? Well, they're 1-2 alongside the Cardinals, which stunned everybody and took down the Cowboys, which seems to be a running theme. Anyway, so the Rams are 1-2 as they've lost 2 straight, which sucks, but hey, what can you do? The run game was quiet. The run game got stuffed. Puka Nacua was pretty good, even though he wasn't as explosive as he was the previous weeks. Though he was questionable to play, and he did play. But again, it would have been great if Matthew Stafford was not under pressure the entire night. And also, speaking of the offensive line, Joe Notaboom also left the game due to injury, which, if the Rams lose him, that's bad news bears right there. So the Rams cannot afford to lose Joe Notaboom yet again, because if they lose him, then that's not good for the offensive line, and that's going to make Matthew Stafford's season a lot tougher. All right, but as for the Rams, they are hitting the road yet again as they head down to the land of NASCAR as they take on the Indianapolis Colts. Speaking of Indianapolis, they take on their former kicker, Matt Gay. All right, this is going to be an interesting matchup. So the Colts are 2-1 as they just toppled the Baltimore Ravens in overtime off of a walk-off field goal from... Okay, not walk-off field goal, a game-winning field goal from... blanking on the name? Matt Gay. How am I blanking on his name? I just said his name a while ago. Anyway, the Colts beat the Ravens off of a game-winning field goal from Matt Gay. And, 2-1. Who would have thought the Colts would be leading the division? Yeah, even the Jaguars are 1-2 after they lost to the Texans. But anyway, this is going to be a lot trickier than expected, especially since this is a 1 p.m. game Eastern Time and 10 a.m. game for all us West Coasters. And it looks like Anthony Richardson is on track to play. If the Rams were about to face Gardner Minshew like the Ravens were this weekend or last weekend, then I maybe would have given the Rams a totally good shot at winning this game. But now that they're facing a Colts team, which will be having a young and spry Anthony Richardson, but not having Jonathan Taylor, I think this is going to be one of those interesting games. It's going to be one of those heads or tails games. Now, on paper, this looks like the Rams could win this game fairly easily. I would say the Rams could win this game if they had Cooper Kupp. Sadly, they do not have Cooper Kupp, and their defense is extremely young, minus Jordan Fuller and Aaron Donald. But I will also say this. I think it's definitely winnable for the Rams, even though they have the Colts have the second coming of maybe Andrew Luck. I wouldn't say Anthony Richardson is Andrew Luck 2.0, and I hope he can have a successful season like Andrew Luck did before he retired due to injuries and whatnot. But I will say this about the Rams. If they play great defensively like they did in the first half against the Niners, and like they did in the second half against the Seahawks, and like they did in the first half against the Bengals, or in the bright parts of the Bengals, then I think the Rams could win this one fairly easily. I'm going to say the Rams beat the Colts, because I initially had this one as a win when I made my predictions. And I'm going to say the Rams win 24-21. I'm going to make that. I made that prediction last week, but I think that's a fair and safe prediction right there. I don't think the Rams are going to blow out the Colts, but at the same time, I think it's going to be a battle to the end. I think Anthony Richardson is going to throw the entire kitchen sink at the Rams, but I think Aaron Donald is eventually going to find his way to Anthony Richardson if he gets cleared to play. But if for some odd reason Anthony Richardson somehow does not get cleared to play and the Rams have to face Gardner Minshew, then I'm fairly certain the Rams are going to win by a whole lot more than just 3. So that is that for the Rams right there. Jumping over to college football. All right. So I have to discuss San Diego State. San Diego State is extremely frustrating because I feel they're kind of the Rams 2.0. They're not flashy and they're not, but except they're not flashy and no one seems to like them, and they're very, 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 very frustrating to deal with and to cheer for. So they played Boise State, and this was on Friday, by the way. And unfortunately, they wound up losing 34-31. Now, them losing is not the frustrating part. How they lost is what really ticked me off. And here's my thing. San Diego State, sadly, they don't have a running back. I don't understand why. It just makes no sense. They're going to get Jalen Maiden killed out there if he has to go Lamar Jackson every single night. And here's the thing. Just like the Rams and the Niners and the Rams and the Bengals, this game was ripe for the picking for San Diego State. They were actually tied 17-17, and they forced Boise State to punt on their opening drive of the second half. But what did San Diego State do on their opening drive of the second half? They missed a field goal. And it was from 40 yards. Gosh darn it, Jack Browning. Why you gotta do this to me? On the other side, Boise State was able to capitalize that, and they made a 27-yard field goal, courtesy of Jonah Dalmas. So it's 20-17. So it's not bad. San Diego State can capitalize off that, and they can get closer, right? No. San Diego State fumbles as on the first play of the drive, Jalen Maiden goes up the gut for 1 yard, and then he fumbles, and it was recovered by Jaden Virgin. So Jalen fumbles, and it's recovered by Jaden. You know, San Diego State is this type of team where if they get an opportunity, it just slips through their fingers. It is the most frustrating thing to deal with as a San Diego State fan. And as a result, Boise State made them pay, as they only needed one drop. They only needed 3 plays to get a touchdown, as the ball was on the 26. Actually, they needed 4 plays to get a touchdown, as Talon Green just went up the gut for a 10-yard touchdown. Now, here's the thing. San Diego State responded, and eventually it was just this cat and mouse game. But sadly, San Diego State just could not keep up with Boise State. And that's the thing. Every time Boise State did... And my thing is, every time Boise State punted, San Diego State punted. Every time... And that's disappointing if you're a San Diego State fan, because you need to continue to... You need to capitalize on the mistakes that Boise State has. Because Boise State is not the most perfect team. Let's get that out of the way. And San Diego State had their chances. And the fact that they put up 31 is rather impressive. And it's good that they put up 31. They have an offense. Their problem is that their defense was so non-existent, just like it was against UCLA. And it's so disappointing because San Diego State could have won this game. It could have been a huge win for the Aztecs. But what did they do? They wound up losing because they're San Diego State. They don't play big-time opponents. And when they do, they turn into a freaking shell of themselves. And they wind up going into fetal position and playing dead. San Diego State football in a nutshell. Anyway, so that's how San Diego State football lost. But on the bright side of things, they did cover because Boise State was a 6.5-point favorite. And I predicted San Diego State losing by 3. Sorry, San Diego State, but that's how it is sometimes. All right, but San Diego State has lost 3 in a row. This is what happens when you play actual good opponents instead of Ohio and Idaho State. So San Diego State has another pretty good opponent on their hands, as tomorrow they hit the road to Colorado to take on Air Force, and Air Force is a whopping 4-0. Now, they don't have the offense. Their offense isn't as explosive as everyone thinks it's going to be. But I will say this. San Diego State really needs to get the job done. And they also need to get Mark Redmond involved. If they can get Mark Redmond involved, then San Diego State is a force to be reckoned with. If not, then they are screwed. I really want to say San Diego State will win this one, but I feel that they're just going to shoot themselves in the foot, like they did against Boise State. Air Force is favored by 10.5 points. Whew. If I were a bettor, I would take San Diego State in a heartbeat in terms of the points. As for the game itself, I'm going to take I'm going to take Air Force to win this one 27-24. I think San Diego State loses in heartbreaking fashion or agonizing fashion. That's how I describe their loss against Boise State. Agonizing. Speaking of agonizing losses, UCLA also lost in agonizing fashion as they had this weird game against Utah. Now, here's the thing. Utah actually had Cam Rising available, but they chose not to play him. They chose to roll out Nate Johnson, their freshman quarterback, and he's been serviceable throughout the entire season, throughout Utah's season, while Cam Rising is healing after that ACL injury. As for the game itself, this is one of those games where UCLA would like to have back, as UCLA didn't get a chance to score until the fourth quarter. Now, unfortunately, UCLA did have a pick 6 called back, and if UCLA doesn't get that pick 6 called back, it's a whole different outlook. But unfortunately, UCLA had that pick 6 called back, and sadly, they lose to Utah 14-7. Yes, 14-7. I'll give this for UCLA's defense. That defense showed up, and they pitched a shutout in the second half. But the problem is this. Where the heck was the offense? 7 points. Biggest game as of right now, and you muster up a whopping 7 points. 7 points! Are you kidding me, UCLA? Chip Kelly, you're supposed to be this offensive mastermind that came from the NFL and that came from Oregon, and you could only drum up 7 points with a phenomenal freshman quarterback in Dante Moore. What? The dude was lucky to have 234 passing yards. He was 15 for 35. 15 for 35. The dude probably didn't have enough time to throw, and he was probably throwing it incomplete, or his receivers couldn't catch a cold. And where in Jupiter's Jingle Shoot was the run game? They had 9 yards, partially because Dante Moore had negative 51 because of all the sacks that he probably took. Goodness gracious, dude. Are you kidding me, dude? UCLA can't win with just 9 rushing yards? Oh my god. No team can win with a non-existent run game. And I don't care if TJ Harden had 31 yards. Still, that's horrible. 31 rushing yards. That was their leading rusher. And I imagine the negative 51 rushing yards was because poor Dante Moore got sacked practically the entire game. And I feel horrible for Dante Moore. I mean, yes, it's so tough to win in Utah. I understand. However, this was so winnable because they're not facing Cam Rising. They're facing a freshman quarterback who could have easily been picked like a seedless grape. And unfortunately, UCLA got rickrolled. Oh my goodness. I just couldn't. I just am baffled by this. I just could not. I can't believe it. I want to see how many sacks that Utah had. He was under pressure all game, according to the press release. But thankfully UCLA scored, because if not, this would have been their first shutout in 12 years. 12 years. Man, dude. I feel horrible for Dante Moore. He got thrown to the wolves in this game. This was clearly not his best game. And the last time a rookie quarterback beat Utah last time a rookie quarterback beat Utah on its home stadium was, believe it or not, Justin Herbert of Oregon back in 2016. So, yeah. I still can't believe that, I still can't believe UCLA had a whopping 9 rushing yards. 9! Sickening. That's sickening right there. And I really want to see how many times poor Dante Moore got sacked. It had to have been too many, if you ask me. But regardless, that's just sick right there. That's just shameful right there for UCLA. Oh, man. Poor UCLA. Well, poor Dante Moore. He's the only guy I feel bad for. Anyway, you know what? I'm not even going to bother. And he also fumbled, which, again, I can't feel too bad for Dante Moore, because when you're under pressure the entire game, it's going to happen. Anyway, so UCLA has a bye this week, as thankfully I remembered. But next week, they are back at it as they return home to the Rose Bowl to take on Washington State, which is undefeated at this moment. But a lot can happen because Washington State is taking on they have a bye too. But they did just upset Oregon State in Spokane. So we'll save that preview for next week. So let's just jump to USC, and oh my god. I don't know what to really say about USC. Except, I'm more baffled at this game than I am with UCLA, Utah. What am I looking at here? USC struggled in this game. This should not have been a game. They won. I'll give USC this. But they only won 42-28. They allowed 28 points. 28 to Arizona State. Arizona State, no offense to them, they're not good. Now, unless Herm Edwards was magically coaching this team, and Herm Edwards' ghost was still around Arizona State or Tempe, I just don't understand why Arizona State was this decent. I understand that Arizona State nearly had as many first downs as USC, but why? And they dominated time of possession, I understand, and it was a rocking crowd as it was full capacity. There was actually 54,166 in attendance, and the capacity was actually 53,599, so good job to Arizona State. I'll give props to them on their fans showing up and showing out. But for SC, that's concerning. 28 points to a one-win Arizona State team. Who, their only win came from NAU? Oh no, to Southern Utah. They don't play NAU. C'est la vie, I guess. But, God, dude, this is where you kind of got to fire Alex Grinch at some point. But, at least Caleb Williams looked good, as I don't think he has thrown a pick as of this recording. Has he? No, he hasn't. He's actually thrown for 1,200 yards exactly, and he's thrown for 15 touchdowns, which is awesome. But because of that 14-point win, which should have been by more, USC actually fell in the AP poll standings as they fell from 5 to 8, which I think is baloney sausage. But it is what it is at this point. So for SC, it is what it is. You gotta basically pick up the pieces. So SC they're still undefeated, which is nice, as they are still on the road, as they will be heading down to Boulder to take on Colorado. They gotta take on Coach Prime in a 9 a.m. tilt. And I'm gonna say this for USC, you better get used to these 9 a.m. matches, or 9 a.m. games, just because guess where you're heading next year? The Big Ten. Get ready to learn AM games, buddy, because you're gonna have to learn to deal with the likes of playing in the East Coast and the Midwest. Anyway, so for USC taking on Colorado, they're taking on Coach Prime, aka Deion Sanders, and the Buffs. So surprisingly, SC is a 21.5 point favorite over Colorado. Meanwhile, for Colorado, the same night USC, how do I say this? Surprised everyone and only won by 14. Colorado got punched in the mouth earlier in the day, and they got stomped on by Oregon 42 to 6, or was it 41 to 6? Either way, it was 42 to 6. And I felt silly for picking Colorado to take the points. Oh, that was funny. And it was so bad that they were down 35-0. The game was decided at halftime. What the heck was that, Colorado? Anyway, and I will say that recap video from Oregon was so epic. And Dan Lanning, I gotta give you the big W award, dude. Like, that pregame speech, that makes you want to run through a freaking wall. He straight up said, they're playing for clicks, we're playing for wins. Woo! That's a shot across the bow if I've ever seen one. Nice work, dude. And I'm not even an Oregon fan, let alone a guy that likes Oregon. Other than Justin Herbert, of course. Anyway, so as for USC Colorado, here's my thing. I think this is going to be a lot tougher than most people anticipated. Yes, Colorado got exposed against the Oregon Ducks, but I will say this. USC is going to need to play a whole lot better than it did last game. Hopefully, for USC's sake, they got that ugly game out of the way against Arizona State. Because if they play like that against Colorado, Colorado might actually have a shot at winning. It's a 9 a.m. game, so SC went from 7:30 p.m., aka Pac-12 After Dark, to Pac-12 waking up with a side of coffee, eggs, bacon, tomatoes, hams, lambs, hogs, dogs. So for USC, I want to say they will win, but it's going to be so tough to cover. And I will also say this. Colorado's got some good talent on their team, and they're well coached. And I'm so surprised that Lincoln Riley has never met Deion Sanders. But I guess it's a former player and coach thing. But I digress. I will say USC wins. What's a good score for USC versus Colorado? I'm going to say SC wins. 49-24. Let's go. That's a respectable score. I think Colorado gives them a little bit of a scare in the first quarter, and then USC breaks out the belt and spanks Colorado with it, and then we can finally move on from this Coach Prime hype. I mean, don't get me wrong, Colorado's going to be good in the future, and I give Coach Prime a lot of credit for all that he's done with Colorado, but it's time to move on from the Coach Prime hype. They're now facing the big boys. And please, SC, please do not look... Well, I don't see how USC could look ahead just because, well, for starters, who are they going to look ahead to? Notre Dame? That's not for a couple weeks. The only way they look... And their next week's opponent is against Arizona, so... I don't see how they look ahead unless they look way far ahead. But... yeah, but I just hope USC doesn't play with their food, and I just hope USC finishes their food and they don't play with it. So that's my hope for SC. Alright, but that's that for USC. I do have them winning 49-24. I think that's a respectable score. I don't want to be too disrespectful to Colorado, otherwise Coach Prime is going to probably bust through the door and tell me that he's going to rip me a new one. Anyway, so as for FCS, college football, San Diego actually got its first win of the season as they beat Dayton 40-25. Well, color me surprised. All of the Toreros players must have been unsuspended, or their suspension must be over after they got in trouble for hazing. Great job, San Diego. Way to be classy. But San Diego did beat Dayton, which is good because it's their first win of the season, and this game was kind of decided by halftime. Even though Dayton kind of made a late push after San Diego was up 33-10, they did score 2 consecutive touchdowns, but San Diego put it away late in the fourth quarter off of a pick 6 from Eric Haney. As I feel bad for Dayton's quarterback, except not really, as Cole Dow had 3 interceptions, so I'm going to assume San Diego's had their full team as opposed to the previous 3 games where they had half of their team suspended because they were suspended because of hazing and whatnot, which included the loss to Colorado Mesa. I still think San Diego should be relegated. Anyway, so San Diego hits the road as they play Davidson. No, not Davidson Crooks. Davidson. Davidson in... Yes, that Davidson. It's a 9 a.m. start time. So, Davidson in North Carolina. So yeah, they play that Davidson, the Wildcats. As they play them tomorrow, and then they have their bye, and hopefully the coach of San Diego can give all those players a talking to on how hazing is unacceptable and how hazing is nowhere near acceptable in any program whatsoever. All right, but that's that for San Diego football, or University of San Diego football and whatnot. I'm glad they got their first win, and thankfully we don't have to hopefully see if they're going to be winless. As for Cal Poly, they got stomped on by Portland State. I thought it was going to be a lot closer, but I forgot Portland State is that good. As they lost to Cal Poly 59-21. I thought it was going to be a lot closer. I knew Cal Poly was going to lose, but I didn't think it was going to be by that much. Anyway, so Cal Poly is back at it this weekend as they will head back to San Luis Obispo to take on UC Davis. That sounds like a Big West Conference matchup. Anyway, no it's not. As Cal Poly plays UC Davis at 5 p.m. Pacific time, I'm looking forward to this matchup just because both teams are 2-2. I have the Mustangs winning. When in doubt, pick Larry B's favorite score, 24-21. I think it's going to be a great little matchup, and I look forward to seeing the Aggies taking on the Mustangs. All right, that's going to do it for Cal Poly versus UC Davis, and when it comes, and we'll jump a little bit brief to the NWSL, and then we'll jump to, but before we do that, we got to jump to some MLS, as unfortunately for what's-their-face, for LAFC, they wound up laying a goose egg in their little tournament, which, yeah, uh-oh, my screen was going to sleep. That's what I get for not setting the settings to long time awake mode. Anyway, so for LAFC, but before we get on into that Campeones Cup, last Saturday they took on the Philadelphia Union and they wound up getting bageled, but so did the Union, as there was a 0-0 draw. So it's back-to-back 0-0 draws for LAFC, as in the 2023 Campeones Cup, they got blanked against against Tigres, as well as LAFC blanked Tigres as well. However, just like most tournaments, they had penalty kicks, and sadly Tigres wound up winning in penalty kicks 4-3. So, thankfully, LAFC, there is a silver lining when it comes to losing tournaments like that, is that LAFC doesn't have to deal with those type of tournaments, and they don't have to deal with canceling games and whatnot and postponing games. They can just look at the MLS going forward. So this Sunday, they are back in MLS action as they host Salt Lake, or Real Salt Lake. Currently in the MLS standings, LAFC is actually second in the Western Conference, which is good. Though they have played one game less than St. Louis, but that's not the team that they have on their coattails. The team that's on their coattails is Seattle, which surprisingly has the same record and same number of points as LAFC. The only difference is goal differential, which LAFC has that category locked up, 10-6. So LAFC currently controls second place for the time being, and if, for some reason, there are 8 teams going into the playoffs, LAFC would be playing Portland. Which is a dangerous matchup, just because Portland, I think, is such an underrated team. In my opinion. So that is that for LAFC and their matchup right there. As yeah. Oh, and I forgot to mention that Wednesday they take on Minnesota, which is on a 3-game skid. Yikes. And then as for the LA Galaxy, we can't forget about Little Brother and how their season is almost over. They haven't played since that amazing come-from-behind victory over Minnesota. They did tie against Austin as they wound up tying them 3-3. So, unlike LAFC, they actually scored goals. As this one was quite the spiked cocktail of a matchup, as Alexander Ring scored for Austin in the 11th minute, but then in 2 minutes after stoppage, in 2 minutes in stoppage time, Ricard Puig scored for the Galaxy. So it was 1-1, but then in 6 minutes after stoppage time, Ethan Finlay scored for Austin, and suddenly it was 2-1 in favor of Austin. Then in the 75th minute, Austin scored, courtesy of Emiliano Rigoni, and suddenly Austin was up 3-1. And everyone on Galaxy Twitter was probably screaming and having a hissy fit and saying, oh my god, the Galaxy suck, this is unacceptable, clean house. But because the LA Galaxy are so resilient, Dejan Hovlicic was able to score in the 89th minute to bring the score but within one at 3-2 in favor of Austin. Then in 4 minutes in stoppage time, Michael Barrios scored the equalizer for the Galaxy to give a point to the Galaxy, as that was the 3-3 tie that the Galaxy managed to pick up in this game. So I don't know what to say regarding this tie. I don't know how the Galaxy do it. They picked up a tie when they should have lost. Why can't they do this with LAFC? The world may never know. Anyway, so the Galaxy are hosting the Portland Timbers this Saturday at 7:30 p.m. And they have 5 matches remaining, as this upcoming Wednesday they will hit the road to the Emerald City to take on the Seattle Sounders, which is going to be an uphill climb. But if there's one thing we are learning about this LA Galaxy team, they are very scrappy and they don't give up. And then they've got Minnesota, Real Salt Lake, and Dallas to close out the season, as the Galaxy are nowhere near a playoff spot, as they're second to last in the Western Conference, as they're 7 points behind 8th. If there are 8 teams going to the playoffs. I hear there are 8 teams going to the playoffs, but I can't really ultimately confirm that just because I am not the MLS expert. But if there are 8 teams, then bully for the LA Galaxy, and we will get to see the 8 team take on the 1 seed, and the 1 seed will not have a bye, which is how LAFC wound up making it to the World Cup, or the MLS Cup Championship. So there's that right there, and just to wrap up the NWSL, there weren't any matches, but NWSL play gets back into action as Angel City FC gets back in action this Monday, as there's going to be some Monday Night Football against Orlando, which is a crucial matchup because both those teams are so close to that 6th spot, because that is the final spot of the NWSL standings, and Orlando and Angel City FC are actually 7th and 8th respectively. Meanwhile, for San Diego, they actually are back in action tomorrow when they hit the road to Portland, which that's the battle for first place. And if they want to win that, they're going to have to play their tails off. And they cannot play like they did against Kansas City, because if they do, then they can kiss first place goodbye. And they can kiss home field advantage goodbye throughout the entire playoffs. Because you got to remember, the NWSL playoffs is going to be... the NWSL Championship is going to be in San Diego, so we would like to see Wave FC, for their sake, make it to the championship and have a deep run, if possible. But that's going to do it for the NWSL quick rundown. We're going to take ourselves a quick break. When we come back, we will have the MLB portion of the show. Then we have the Dum Dum of the Week. Keep it locked here. You are listening to the SoCal Supreme Sports Show here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that sports. We'll be right back after this.
What's up, sports fans? You're listening to IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. I'm your favorite West Coast Wisconsinite, Bernie Bango, and if you're a cheesehead, come listen to my show, Big Cheese Sports, where we road trip around America's Dairyland, previewing, reviewing, predicting, debating, and digging into all that is Wisconsin sports at the college and pro levels. Join me on IE Sports Radio, Sundays at 1 p.m. Central Standard. Bernie out.
Well, what is up, Carolina Nation? This is John Felipe of the Carolina Cast, of course, the podcast of, by, and for the Carolinas, right here on IE Sports, your direct feed for all that is sports. And I'm reminding you to tune in Fridays at 7 p.m. Eastern for the latest in Carolina sports, whether it's the Panthers that keep on pounding, the fly natures of the Hornets, the storming Hurricanes, the battle of the Blues with Duke and UNC, the fight of the Clemson Tigers, or the amazing atmosphere of any Carolina college. I'm talking App State, I'm talking ECU. I've got you covered. Once again, tune in for the Carolina Cast with me, John Felipe, Fridays at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
All right. Welcome to AZ Sports Daily. I'm your host, Kieran Daly, bringing the heat to Arizona sports. There's no discrimination here. We're going to talk about every sports team, professional and college. The show is all about you, the listener. I'm here to entertain you. Are you not entertained? Is this not why you are here? It's going to be fun, high energy. You may not agree with what I say. That's okay. Let me hear you. Let's talk about it. Join me every Wednesday, 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, right here on AZ Sports Daily. That's AZ Sports, Daily, and at IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
What up, Boston sports fans? This is Mikey Two Guns here, your host of Our Bleepin' City, airing every Wednesday night from 7 to 8 p.m. right here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. Please join me. We'll talk everything Boston sports, all the local teams, college teams. I'm even down to talk MMA, boxing, whatever you guys want. So join me every Wednesday night, 7 to 8 p.m. Chime in with your questions on the chat, tweet the show. We'll even have call-ins. I can't wait to hear from you guys. This is going to be a lot of fun. So once again, it's Our Bleepin' City. I am your host, Mikey Two Guns, every Wednesday night from 7 to 8 p.m. right here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. See you soon, people.
Back with segment number 2 of the SoCal Supreme Sports Show here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that sports. Definitely check out all of our amazing shows. And one of our shows, Carolina Cast, is going to be going on in less than an hour. Check out my boy, John Felipe. But before we do so, let's get on into the second half of the SoCal Supreme Sports Show. Let's jump on into the MLS portion of this show, as we're not going to really discuss too much, as there's not much to discuss when it comes to the Angels. Their season is almost over, and they're playing the Oakland A's. We don't need to discuss all that much, as the A's stink, and so do the Angels, and basically, they're both clown cars disguised as MLB teams. That's it. We don't need to discuss more about the Angels. All right, now for the actual teams that are either in contention to make the playoffs or have already made the playoffs. The Dodgers. All right, the Dodgers are closing out their regular season against the Giants. So the Dodgers have kind of had a little bit of a rocky way in terms of this week. Against the Giants, they managed to win. They managed to win, if my math is serving me correctly, 3 out of 4, as they wound up winning, as we mentioned last Thursday, 7-2. They lost last Friday 5-1, but they beat the Giants last Saturday 7-0. And then in 10 innings on national TV, they beat the Giants 3-2. Then against the Rockies, this was kind of a, rocky way as they split the series against the Rockies. The doubleheader actually saw a split between that as the Rockies wound up taking Game 1 4-1, and then the Dodgers took Game 2 11-2. Then on Wednesday, the Dodgers took that game 8-2, and then yesterday, the Rockies took that game against the Dodgers 14-5. So like I mentioned, the Dodgers are heading down to San Francisco to take on the Giants. The Giants recently just fired their manager, Gabe Kepler, which, yikes. That's just how bad of a season the Giants had. And you know the Giants have had it rough ever since the Giants were actually in contention of getting a wild card spot, and then the Diamondbacks rose, the Padres kind of came back from the grave, and then the Giants just deteriorated. So the Dodgers will have no problem, or should have no problem, putting the Giants out of their misery, or at least getting 2 wins. The Dodgers are locked in of being the 2 seed of the playoffs, so it's not a matter of if they're going to be in the playoffs. It's just a matter of who they're going to be facing. So yeah, overall, the Dodgers are... Oh, I'm looking at the overall. They actually have the 3rd best record in the league, as the Dodgers have the 2nd best record, and no one's going to catch them, not even the Brewers. So we could be seeing the Dodgers and the Braves on a crash course. And yeah. All right, but that's that for the Dodgers. Now for the Padres. All right, the Padres. I didn't think that I'd be uttering these words, but the Padres are still alive when it comes to the wild card race. They're 3.5 back of the final wild card spot, which is currently occupied by the Marlins. But here we are. The Padres are still alive and kicking. So this past weekend, the Padres took 2 out of 3 against the Cardinals. So they won the first game last Friday 4-2, which pushed their winning streak to 7. And then their winning streak was halted as they lost an 11-inning heartbreaker to the Cardinals last Saturday, 5-2. Then Sunday they got back on track as they took down the Padres 12-2. Then against the Giants this past week, they won 2 out of 3 against the Giants. It was looking concerning in this series as they lost the first game 2-1. Then on Tuesday, they beat the Giants 4-0, which I think was the game that eliminated the Giants from playoff contention. And if that wasn't the game, then Wednesday was the game as the Padres beat the Giants 5-2 in extra innings. 10 innings, for that matter. So the Padres had the day off as they hit the road to the Windy City to take on the Chicago White Sox. Very weird that the Padres, of all teams, are playing in interleague play to close out the season. But I guess the Padres are the unlucky one just because there are 5 teams in a division and you can't play 1.5 teams. Just because 5 is not a divisible number. Anyway, so yeah, a lot is going to need to go the Padres' way if they want to make the playoffs. But there is hope for the Padres. As the old saying goes, don't get eliminated. So good luck to the Padres, and regardless of what happens, the fact that they're still alive at this point of the season, throughout all of the horrid luck that they've had, throughout everything that they've gone through, throughout the suspension that they had with Fernando Tatis Jr., throughout the injuries that they've had, throughout everything that they've been through, honestly, and throughout the losing streaks that they've had, honestly, let's not forget the underachieving because they had high hopes coming into the season. Through all that, they still have a shot to make the playoffs. That's amazing. So, I'm very impressed by the Padres, and even though it's most likely going to see them not make the playoffs, then yeah. But if they do make the playoffs, then we will see them in the postseason with the Dodgers. But I'm not going to hold my breath on that, honestly. Well, that is going to do it with the MLB portion of the show. I kind of had to make it brief just because there's not too much to talk about with that. And there's not too much to talk about when it comes to the NBA, WNBA, and whatnot, and then college basketball. So let us jump on into Dum Dum of the Week. So Dum Dum of the Week is an award I like to give out to someone I basically... It's basically an award I give out to an organization or someone I give out to that basically does or says something dumb. So no one is safe from this award. Anyone can get this Dum Dum of the Week award. And honestly, no one is safe. And anyone is deserving of this Dum Dum of the Week award. And I will show no mercy. So I originally was only going to have one Dum Dum of the Week, but unfortunately, someone decided to do something really dumb, and, well, let's just say there's going to be a second Dum Dum of the Week. And it's not me. So, the first Dum Dum of the Week is going out to a matchup, to a team. So, if you all remember a college football matchup, this was a primetime matchup, and we're not talking Coach Prime either. So, if you all remember, this was a big-time matchup between two top 10 teams, Notre Dame and Ohio State. I actually picked Notre Dame to beat Ohio State because I didn't think Ohio State was actually going to win, just because I didn't think Ohio State actually had it in them. For me, that was a mistake because, well, Notre Dame was actually dominating the game, but then Ohio State rose like the phoenix from the ashes. And then on the last play of the game, pretty much the last play of the game, let's just say Ohio State wound up winning the game on a rushing touchdown or something of that sort. It was either the last play of the game or it was near the last play of the game. But regardless, Ohio State wound up winning a close one against Notre Dame because that's how Ohio State is. But there's more to this than meets the eye. I'm bearing the lead here when it comes to this whole thing. So when it came to that, it was on the last second. So Chip Trayanum was the one that scored off of the touchdown run. But here was the problem. And prepare to be flabbergasted by this. Notre Dame had only 10 players on the field. Let me tell you that again. Notre Dame had 10 players on the field when Ohio State had that touchdown run. Alright, Notre Dame, remember when the Green Bay Packers wound up losing to the San Francisco 49ers in the playoffs after they had only 10 players on the field when the Niners kicked that game-winning field goal? Well, that's kind of understandable because that's a field goal. That's kind of inevitable. And Robbie Gould is basically Robbie Gould. This could have been avoided. Unfortunately, I don't know who is your defensive coordinator. I forgot who your coach is, but dang it, how do you only have 10 players on the field in what is a crucial drive and on a crucial play that is basically the most crucial play of the game, which eventually gave the other team the win? You gotta be some kind of stupid to only have 10 players on the field. Gosh dang it, Notre Dame. No wonder no one takes you seriously. I can't believe you had 10 players on the field. What are you thinking? No wonder people don't classify you as a contender. I'm sorry, but that's just terrible right there. 10 players on the field when they're either going to run it or just throw it on the 1 yard line. Come on, dude. That's bad. That's horrible, dude. So, for Notre Dame and their entire personnel, their coaching staff, or whoever decided to only have 10 players out on the field, you're basically Dum Dum of the Week number 1 because, well, there's no logic in having 10 players against 11 offensive players. So, to the Notre Dame football personnel who decided to roll out 10 players defensively against Ohio State's 11 offensive players, you're this week's Dum Dum of the Week.
So dumb. You are so dumb. You are really dumb. For real.
But that's just Dum Dum of the Week number 1. Now, this actually Dum Dum of the Week number 2 actually happened yesterday, and this made me so sick to my stomach, and it made me so angry. Alright, so as we all know, Thursday Night Football happened between the Detroit Lions and the Green Bay Packers. So, as we all know, Amon-Ra St. Brown is a former Southern California product. He went to Mater Dei High School, and he also played at USC, or the University of Southern California. And now he's a proud member of the Detroit Lions. So, this matchup between the Lions and the Packers did not feature a whole lot of passing touchdowns, as David Montgomery was the one that was doing damage. But Amon-Ra St. Brown did find the end zone, as Jared Goff was kind enough to basically find him in the end zone for the touchdown. And afterward, Amon-Ra St. Brown did the Lambeau leap, and he found a few Lions fans. Now, good job to Amon-Ra St. Brown on doing the Lambeau leap. Now, you're probably wondering, well, why is that Dum Dum of the Week? Well, it's not his fault. He's not getting Dum Dum of the Week. But what I will say is this. Someone is done messed up, because there was a Green Bay Packers fan right behind the Lions fans who decided to do the worst and most unthinkable thing I've ever seen. The Green Bay Packers fan right behind the Lions fan and Amon-Ra St. Brown decided to pour beer on Amon-Ra St. Brown. I'm not kidding you. There was a Green Bay Packers fan that poured beer on Amon-Ra St. Brown after he did the Lambeau leap. Alright, I understand defending the Lambeau leap and its honor, but that is just unacceptable. How dare you? First of all, you are giving Packers fans a horrible name. Second of all, the fact that you are pouring alcohol on a player, that's terrible, dude. That's just absolutely horrible. First of all, you show no class to the other team. Second of all, you represent your fan base as sick and terrible. And third, I think that's dangerous, honestly. What if that gets in his eye? Like, you can't just pour alcohol on a player or anyone in general. That's terrible, dude. I'm sorry. And what if your germs are on that? Your germs are on that, dude. I'm sorry, but that's just horrible. You stupid Green Bay Packers fan who decided to pour alcohol on Amon-Ra St. Brown. And also, Amon-Ra St. Brown, it's not his fault your defense couldn't defend him. Like, come on. So, how dare you decide to pour alcohol on Amon-Ra St. Brown? That's just horrible right there. And I really, 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 really hope that the Green Bay Packers issued an apology. I'm about to check Green Bay Packers X and whatnot, but honestly, the fact that someone decided to pour alcohol on Amon-Ra St. Brown is just absolutely horrible. That's just downright classless right there, and the fact that that was a thing right there is just horrible. And it looks like we do not have a statement from the Green Bay Packers saying that pouring alcohol on Amon-Ra St. Brown was classless. So, oh boy. But honestly, that's terrible, dude. To the Green Bay Packers fan, you should be ashamed of yourself. And I hope Packers fans out there basically disown you. So, to Packers fans out there, please disown this man. Please let this man have it. And to Lambeau Field, I hope you did something and you basically kicked this man out. And you basically did something about it. So, to this Green Bay Packers fan who poured alcohol on Amon-Ra St. Brown, you're dumb, you're stupid, you don't even deserve the Kawhi Leonard laugh. You are just absolutely dumb and illogical. So, You basically are the dum-dum of the week, and you don't get no Kawhi Leonard laugh.
You are so dumb. You are really dumb. For real.
Yeah, and that's all you get, because there's no logic in doing that, and that's actually dangerous to pour an alcoholic substance on a player, or anybody like that. Stupid people and their stupid logic and whatnot. What benefit is that to pour alcohol on a player? What, just so you could be cool and whatnot? Idiot. It kind of makes me hope that the Packers don't make the playoffs and they get humbled the rest of the way. I'm glad the Lions wound up winning that game, by the way. And good on Amon-Ra St. Brown. Alright, but before I lose my mind even more, that's going to do it for this week's episode of the SoCal Supreme Sports Show. Ladies and gentlemen, before I lose my mind when it comes to... Oh my goodness, I almost did a dumb thing right there. I almost pressed stop. I almost stopped the recording when it came to this whole thing. Before I lose my mind when it comes to everything, it is time we get on out of here, because I got a big night ahead of me when it comes to broadcasting. Yeah, dig? Thank you everyone for tuning in to the SoCal Supreme Sports Show. I really do appreciate everybody tuning in. If you listen live, I appreciate you. If you listen on the playback, I appreciate you. If you listen at work, I appreciate you. If you listen at any time, any place, anywhere, I appreciate you. Shout out to Davidson Crooks and Jen B, who was in the chat room, as well as Patty Bax if she was listening. I appreciate you listening as well. I will most likely be back next week, but most likely at 2 p.m. Pacific time, just because it looks like work is scheduling me from 9 a.m. to like 1-ish, or 9-ish to like 1-ish, so it looks like I'm going to have to be adapting to the 2 p.m. shift when it comes to the SoCal Supreme Sports Show. It is what it is, in all honesty, but c'est la vie, I guess. For everyone here at IE Sports Radio, this is Teran Rodriguez signing off. You all have yourself a great rest of the weekend. Be safe, be well. Don't pour alcohol on people, otherwise you will get arrested, and I will make sure of it, and I hope someone else makes sure of it. Just remember that tomorrow is Set Point's birthday, as it will mark the first time that Set Point went live 4 years ago to that day. And see you all Monday for the 4-year anniversary of Set Point. Have a great weekend, everybody, and remember, SoCal is for SoCal. Peace!